Don't film yourself having sex advocates keeping yourself safe online, because in the digital age, one can get into serious legal trouble at the click of a button. Tamsyn De Beer and Emma Sadlier together run one of South Africa's leading social media law consultancies, point out the social traps and the legal tangles that one could find oneself facing as you navigate the murky waters of this digital age. In a fun, witty and easily accessible way, this groundbreaking book details the legal, disciplinary and reputational risks that one's company and even one's children would face online. Well, we are fortunate to be joined today by the book's co-author, Tamsyn De Beer. Good morning, Tamsyn.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you back with us. This is a very interesting book, and I think something that everyone that's active online should be, should be reading at least. But just give us the sort of broad overview of the book. It's got a very powerful title, huh?
Yes, well, we've really seen, as with the advent of social media, that people's modes of communication have changed fundamentally. And we're seeing more and more people on social media publishing content on what is effectively a very public, very international platform. And we're starting to see more and more people getting into trouble because of that, both adults and particularly children. So we just thought there was this desperate ignorance about the risks of social media, and that's why we sort of embarked on writing the book. And as you say, it's really not a legal textbook. It's supposed to be a fun and easy read to try and educate people about those risks. So we've got a section dedicated to the legal section, issues like defamation and privacy. We've got a section just dealing with common sense, things about online safety and what happens to your accounts when you die. And then we have a whole section dedicated to business. So from the employment perspective, when can you lose your job because of what you say online, issues the companies need to think about. And then very importantly, a whole section dedicated to children, dealing with issues of online bullying, cyberbullying, sexting, and those sorts of issues.
Common sense was the one word that kind of stood out for me when we were talking about. Is there such a thing as common sense on social media? I don't think so.
Well, most of the people that we see getting into trouble, you ask yourself, what were you thinking? But I think that people don't realize that when they use these platforms, that they are publishing this content publicly. I think people treat it very much like a private diary. And so we see a lot of people venting about their boss or venting about different people that are irritating them. So yes, it really is. We detail a lot about the law in the book, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, like you say, common sense.
Yeah, and it's not a private diary. It's a broadcast platform, really, and it should be treated as such.
Exactly. You know, you're in the media and you know all about the laws that apply to you, having this huge voice that you do have. But now we all have that voice. We all have the ability to publish content on a public platform. And so people must realize that.
Now we see a lot of pictures, of course, people put semi-nude, nude pictures and all sorts of themselves up, and it's kind of open sourced and a bit of a free-for-all. There's lots of sex games and sexy games and this kind of things doing the round in the online space. Should parents become friends of their children online in order to, I don't know, manage them, but monitor them maybe?
Well, absolutely. I don't think this is something that parents can say, you know, this is something for the children. Because the generational gap between the parents and the children, unfortunately, children are oftentimes going to be ahead of their parents in terms of understanding the technology. But parents do need to take an active interest in what their children are doing online. And one way to do that is to really monitor what's going on. You know, you talk about sort of in the context of sexting. Amongst children, it's become an absolute epidemic. And the reputational harm and the legal risk that comes with that for children is incredibly high. And so parents really do need to take an active interest and really educate their children about the risks.
Are social networks safe for anyone to use and just interact on?
Well, it all depends. I mean, that's sort of a very broad statement. In terms of everyday interactions, if, you know, from my perspective, using it as a business tool, a platform like Twitter is wonderful. In terms of access to information, it's wonderful. So we are by no means advocating that everyone get off social media immediately. It's just about using it responsibly.
Understanding the legalese that goes with it also, and that's where you should be reading the book. Don't film yourself having sex. Anyhow, I want to ask you, you know, every business now in their PR plan has a social media plan. In the social media plan, is it acceptable practice to kind of put these wacky kind of pictures on that we see? Is there a line? Is it a fine line?
Well, each business will be different, and the social media content that a business pushes out on their various platforms must align with the general message and the general tone of the business as a whole. But you speak about each business having a social media plan. We think that with that, there's not enough thinking about the way to mitigate the risks that go with that. It's all very well to say, let's all get onto social media. Let's use the platform to build a customer base and interact with our clients. But you've actually got to mitigate that risk. You've got to wonder who's managing those platforms for you. Do they understand the laws? What happens when things go wrong? And those are the sorts of things that businesses really need to start thinking about.
What about the individual? In conclusion, let's go back to the title or the cover. What are the precautions that the individuals should take when filming themselves? Or should they just not bother with filming themselves in intimate moments?
Well, the fact of the matter is we've got a whole chapter called Don't Film Yourself Having Sex. And that stems from a real legal case that we had to deal with. And what we learned from that is that while there are laws that can potentially help you, the law of copyright, the law of harassment, the law of privacy, at the end of the day, the reputational harm that you suffer when something like a sex tape is leaked online, it just cannot be undone, that harm. And so we would advocate that let's just not do it in the first place. Prevention is better than cure. And if you insist, make sure that your face and your genitals are not in the same frame.
I like that. Tamsyn, thank you very much. That sort of gives us a little bit of leeway for those of you at home that always think about filming yourself having sex. It goes much wider than that, actually. There's a whole lot of legalese. It's in the book, Don't Film Yourself Having Sex. The author is right here with me, Tamsyn De Beer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's a wonderful book. And everyone that's active in the online space, this is not your private diary, this Facebook thing or this Twitter thing. It's a broadcast platform, just like what I'm doing now. And the same rules apply when you're broadcasting to the wider world. And the most important thing is, don't film yourself having sex if you're not getting paid for it anyhow. Thanks, Tamsyn.